Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session, Tea with the Druid. Let me know that you're here and where you're from. It's always lovely to see where people are from. And it also helps me to know that the technology is working and that you're hearing this. And and here we have the first person is Mike Amos from Abruzzo in Italy. Hello, Mike. That's great to see you here. And I always have this image in my mind of people coming from different parts of the forest into this clearing. Some in a rush, some walking confidently and quietly. Tea and the scones from Fairbanks, Alaska. Great. Santa Monica. Oh, how lovely. Baked beans and veggie sausages. People are bringing food in. This is just a tea party, but you're bringing food. Scones, sausages. Iceland. Fantastic. I couldn't even begin to pronounce your name, Ragnhildur Jonsdottir. Jules' cousin from with tea and cake down the road. And Art Scarborough from Louisiana. Fantastic. Fantastic. Great to see everybody here. Well, keep on introducing yourself because it's a way of including yourself in the group as well, as you know, if you've been here before. And I don't know how your day has been. I've had a busy day, and in the morning I was helping to make a film that's being added into our celebrancy course. You know, in the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, we offer an online celebrancy course. One course is on how to create beautiful funerals and how to lead them, how to work with the families of the bereaved, and so on. And the other course is on what we call family celebrancy, which is weddings, hand fastings, baby namings, and so on. And they're really well taught and curated by River, a member of the order. And we've added a new film to the celebrancy course for funerals about the importance of psychological support and supervision when you're being a celebrant, particularly if you're doing a number of funerals. Some celebrants do really quite a lot of funerals now, and it's great to have trained support. And so River was talking with Lindsay, who's a wonderful counsellor and therapist who offers support to celebrants. So it was a busy day, and so I've got my notes here, and I see that I have to mention Buddhism and hydrology, a Jesuit nun, and the value of dentists' waiting rooms. So how does that all weave together? Well, what I wanted to talk about, it's so distracting having everybody saying hi. It's just lovely. It's like a crazy party with everybody coming in and saying hi. And the tendency is, of course, for those of us doing these tea sessions is to say hi back to everybody. And I would love to do that. Llanelli in Wales, Cornwall, yes, but I won't, because you want to hear this discussion. So here's the idea that we're talking about today. Perspective. Somebody once said, attitude is everything. Well, of course, it's not absolutely everything, but it's hugely important, and we all know this. And in our everyday language, we talk about somebody being short-sighted, somebody having tunnel vision, somebody not seeing the wood for the trees. It's a common problem with Druids, not seeing the wood for the trees. And more recently, we've become familiar with the term the echo chamber, the way our perspective, we tend to stay and read the same things, communicate with people of like mind, particularly as with the internet, we can control the kind of news that we read and the stories that we hear. And so that our perspective can very easily and perhaps even unwittingly come to be quite circumscribed. And here are just some shorts I'd like to share with you, and it would be lovely to hear how you feel as well. And it connects with the spiritual life. And the way I got to this originally is I have breakfast once a month or so with a colleague who's a psychologist who comes from a slightly different angle to me. He's trained in solutions-focused brief therapy. So he and I share tremendous amounts in common, and then certain we just come at things from a slightly different angle. And I was coming back from a breakfast with him one morning a few months back, and I was thinking about how much I enjoyed these breakfasts and bouncing ideas off each other and so on. And I just got this image that in sharing ideas with somebody who has kind of the same approach, but just comes at things from a slightly different angle, it's like having bifocal vision. It's like if you look at something from only one point of view, it's the opposite. I've forgotten what the word for monofocal vision is. But if you just consider a slightly different perspective, if it's way off, then maybe that doesn't happen because it's just too far out for you. But if it's reasonably similar, that's going to create more depth of field for you. So those of you who know photography, you know this concept of the depth of field, which is when there's very little depth of field. If the image you were seeing now had very little depth of field, you'd just see maybe my nose in focus, and then everything else would be blurred. So all the attention would be here. But in this image, there's a lot of depth of field. So you can see the bookshelf behind, and you can see my face in the same degree of sharpness. And so I guess, you know, using this term depth of field, what we want to be able to do is look out on the landscape, have a beautiful perspective, and see something far away in the distance on the horizon and something near to hand. And whilst it can be beautiful for the mist to come up and for suddenly us only to see a few branches of a tree really close and everything else to be hidden, we wouldn't like to lead our whole lives like that. We'd want the sun to shine and the clouds to part and to get a really broad perspective. Now, if we apply that to our spiritual life, I see here the value of dentist waiting rooms. I have to mention, for me, in the danger of the echo chamber is, of course, is that I read only stuff that I kind of agree with, and I'm not doing this. I'm not broadening my horizons, and I find dentist waiting rooms immensely valuable in helping me in this process, because the kind of dentists I hang out with have publications that I would never look at, like the Daily Mail, for instance, and it's very popular. Those of you who aren't in this country may not know that the Daily Mail is considered by many people to be kind of gutter press and not worth looking at and so on. So I never read it. And I would probably tart along with all my friends about the Daily Mail. But to be honest, I never even look at the thing. But the dentist has it. So I'm able to open the page and tut as I read and actually read and say, oh, that's funny. They're looking at the immigration question. They're looking at Brexit. They're looking at Trump, whatever, from a slightly different angle. And this helps me to get more depth of field. So, okay, so this is a straightforward idea. How does that apply to those of us who are interested in the spiritual life? Well, I'm fascinated by all spiritual approaches, really. I'm interested in religion and spirituality. I'm interested in their value, and I'm also interested in the psychopathology of spirituality in a religion, the strangeness, the weirdness you get in religion, and when it goes wrong too. But I'm interested in when it goes wrong, primarily to really understand what it is that's valuable and how to make it go right, if you understand me. And so over the years, I've studied, in addition to Druidry, which is the path that I've been treading since I was young, for the last 50 years. In addition to that, over the years, I've studied different religions. And about 10 years ago, I came across the religion of Jainism. Now, if you haven't heard that word, you might think that's rather odd. It's like Davism or Philippism, Jainism. And anybody who's called Jain will think, oh, wow, there's a religion named after me. But no, it's Jaina from India. It's one of the oldest religions in the world. It's a fascinating religion. It's beautiful. It's interesting. And it's different from the other Dharmic religions. It's many similarities with Buddhism, but it also is slightly different. And so about 10 years ago, I started to study it and to really go into some depth with it. And at some moment, whenever I've studied another path, I've wondered if I should switch tracks. Maybe I should become a Jain, you know. But what I've come to realize is that actually I can sincerely study or even follow practices from another spiritual tradition. And this informs the other practices and the other studies and teachings that I follow too. And rather than distracting from them or diverting my attention, it actually gives me a greater depth of field, a greater appreciation and perspective on the spiritual life. And I was puzzled by this as I started to realize that, because I'd often heard people saying things like, if you're going to study somebody's thrown me by saying I follow Philippism. Thank you, Holly. And sky-clad sadhus. So just joining from Kentucky. Okay, stop being distracted. So distraction is precisely what people will say. They will say, follow only one path. There are many paths up the mountainside, but if you get distracted following different paths, you'll just be pottering around in the foothills. You won't get to the summit. If you're digging for water, dig in only one place. If you start digging all over the place, you won't find water. So I was kind of bothered by this thought that maybe this was distraction behavior, and that really I shouldn't be interested in other religions and spiritualities. One day I was at a Druid camp, and there was a member of the order who was a Buddhist. And I said to him, how do you relate to this? How can you be a Buddhist and a Druid? Because after all, you know, as people say, when you're digging for water, you dig only one hole. And he smiled and he said, well, in addition to being a Buddhist and a Druid, I'm also a hydrologist. And I can tell you that when you drill for water, you don't drill one hole. You drill at least two, because you have to get the pressure, and drilling with one hole is insufficient. And so that showed me, that was interesting in it. And it showed me how we can get caught in the metaphor, in the analogy, and they can help us. But the mountain analogy and the paths, for instance, that can actually not be helpful. Because, of course, if you're using the mountain analogy, you want to go up one path. But occasionally, sometimes it does make sense just to deviate, to take a little shortcut, or to take a stroll on another path that leads you around the other side of the mountain. It's rather beautiful on the way up, and so on. So where does the Jesuit nun come in? Well, I was sharing this idea with Susan Jones, who used to run our mentor program for 17 years. And she said, well, that's interesting you say that, because I was taking a retreat with a Jesuit nun a while back. And she was talking about the value of following two paths, drawing on the teachings and ideas of two different spiritual traditions. And she said, the Jesuit nun said, I have often found that people with the deepest sense of spirituality are those who have done this. And so this is really by way of saying, if you feel drawn to study other paths, or more than one path, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't worry about it. I remember when I broached this with Renu, the editor of our Druid magazine in the USA, talking to her about the Dharmic traditions and how you can follow Dharmic traditions and Druidry. She said she breathed a great sigh of relief, because she was a Hindu by birth and culture, living in the States, and just realizing that she could follow Druidry and Hinduism, it took a whole load of pressure off her. We tend to take on board ideas, and then they exert a sort of kind of pressure. Last week I talked about the concept of being good enough, and how when you take off that pressure to be perfect, for everything to be as good as it can be, but you say that no, you change it to good enough, it takes pressure off. This is another idea. Richard Gere is talking about, I'm a Roman Catholic, but have absorbed other spiritual practices into my life. Exactly. There's the famous Father B. Griffiths down in India, who followed Hinduism and Catholicism. He was a Catholic priest, but deeply embedded in Hinduism as well. So really, this is just to say, if you feel drawn to following other paths, Jesse is saying, trying to keep my path too concise drove me batty. Yes. So I think this speaks to many of us now. The risk is, of course, what some critics talk about new age smorgasbording, where there are so many juicy offerings out there on the internet, in the bookshops, that one can waste time snacking with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But, again, I think we need to cut people some slack and say, well, maybe snacking for a while is all right. You could try the buffet, try a whole range of different things, dip into Wicca and Christianity and Hinduism and Jainism and Buddhism and Druidism. And maybe you'll find that a couple of them speak to you, or just one speaks to you, and it's okay, So this is why I'm really glad that Oba, the order that I work with, comes out of what's called the Universalist tradition, which recognizes the universal truths in all spiritualities. It works in particular with the Druid tradition, but it's really interested in universal themes and teachings too. So let's see if we can work this into some kind of practice. And here I thought I'd introduce you to a little exercise that takes 5 or 10 minutes. It was developed, I think, by Dr. Claude Abrazol, who's a sophrologist, and it works with the two sides of the brain, and it's just fun. But it also works with one's consciousness, and so it can take you quite deep, but it doesn't have to, and you can just enjoy it for a fun exercise. So if you're up for it, try this now, or if you prefer just to listen and then try it again later on, listening to a recording, by all means do so. I thought we'd work with the symbol of the cauldron and the chalice, and let's see what happens. So here we go. If you're ready, you might want to close your eyes to better focus on yourself and your awareness, and just become aware of sounds around you, maybe sounds far away, closer to hand, so that would include hearing my voice now, and then any sound you might be experiencing from within your own body, such as your heartbeat, your digestion, or your breathing, perhaps. Move your awareness to the soles of your feet, and just squeeze the muscles together. Give them a good squeeze, and then release them. Now squeeze your calves together. Squeeze, release. Thighs together. Squeeze your thigh muscles. Release. If it's okay if you squeeze your I've forgotten what it's called. Anyway, the pelvic region, squeeze it all together. The pelvic floor, that's it. Squeeze your pelvic floor together. Release. Squeeze your tummy. Squeeze your chest. You might just want to just push your shoulder blades back a little. Squeeze the muscles in your upper arms, lower arms, forearms. And then make fists out of your hands. Just squeeze your fists together. Move your awareness up to your neck, and then squeeze your neck by moving your sort of chin down, making a strange face with your chin. Squeeze, tightening the muscles in your neck. I know. Then scrunch up the whole of your face. Nobody can see you, so you scrunch up the whole of your face, squeezing all the muscles in your face and your head. And then relax. Just pause for a moment, keeping your eyes closed. Just allowing whatever sensations you're having to occur. And now move your awareness to your left eye. And just with your left eye still closed, just trace an upward pointing triangle 3 times. You might feel your eyeball moving. Just imagine or feel your eye tracing an upward pointing triangle. 1, 2, 3. A downward pointing triangle 3 times. Make a cross 3 times, up and down, then to the side. 3 times. And then circle around. Make a circle going clockwise around with your eyeball 3 times. And then 3 times the other way. Move your awareness to your right eye. Trace an upward pointing triangle 3 times. A downward pointing triangle 3 times. Make a cross 3 times. And then a circle going clockwise around 3 times. And then anti-clockwise 3 times. Move your awareness now to your left eye again. And imagine that in front of your left eye is a cauldron. Doesn't matter if you don't see it clearly. If you can't see anything or you find it hard to imagine things, just pretend you're seeing it. Just imagine you're seeing it there. So you can see this old cauldron. Maybe it's studded around its rim. It's an old cauldron. Allow that image to dissolve. Move your awareness to your right eye. And in your right field of vision, sense a cup, the sort of cup that would have been used at the time of Jesus, the sort of very simple bowl or cup that might have been used at the Last Supper. Just a simple bowl. And you can imagine the sort of material it's made of. And then allow that image to dissolve. And then in the center of your field of vision, using both your eyes and your imagination, just see a Holy Grail. Just whatever your imagination or fantasy is of a Holy Grail. You might like to imagine it radiating energy. A wonderful kind of light that flows towards you and flows all around. And then gradually allow that awareness of the Grail to gently fade as you become aware of being seated in a clearing in the forest, in the sacred grove, the earth beneath you, the sky above you, the trees around you. You feel the stability of the earth, bringing you strength and health. You sense the vitality and the energy of the sky, and you breathe in this vitality and energy. And the energy of the sky meets the energy of the earth within the center of your being. And then gradually allow your awareness of the sacred grove to fade, to become fully present here and now, feeling present in your physical body here, looking at slowly opening your eyes, stretching your fingers and toes, and looking at your computer screen or your pad or your phone. So I hope you enjoyed that exercise. You can find a kind of simple version of it using trees, images of trees, on my website. There's a menu item called Sophrology, and there's a little video on there. All these little hearts and thumbs up are flying across the screen. It's nice to hear you liked it. And Chris Hughes saying, sorry you lost me at the Christian symbolism. Sure, it does. You know, if that doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. Try the tree one, which is on the website, where you imagine, you can do it with anything really. I mean, that's imagining a tree in winter with snow, bare, and then on the other side you imagine a tree in spring with blossom, and then you merge the two and perhaps see it, you know, with fruit on it, something like that. It's just, you know, I don't know if you got a touch of that, working with these two different sides of the brain. And Jason is asking for some meditation videos for YouTube. Well, a lovely guy who watches these broadcasts and who runs something called the Mind Orchestra has produced a beautiful soundtrack for me, which I really hope to use in one. So I look forward to doing that. What is your website? Says Richard. It's just my name.com, Philip Carr-Gomm with the hyphen, with the line, philipcarr.com. It's the advantage of having a weird name is there's only one of me, philipcargomm.com. And yes, and do feel free to adapt that visualization to symbols that work for you. You might find other images that work in terms of, you think about different perspectives and you know how they can perhaps unite and combine. So thank you for being here, and it's, I always, whenever I do these sessions, I always want to stay with you. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave. But I'm going to refill this cup of tea, and I'm going to get something to nibble as well. And I will come back and read your thoughts. So if you have any thoughts on perspective, what I'd really love to hear, I once did an internet poll actually on my blog, how many people combine more than two paths? It was quite interesting. I seem to remember about 60% of the people who combine, there's somebody here saying, Pete, saying he combines an eclectic mix of Druid craft and Native American. So tell me, what are the elements of your tradition? Do you like to follow just one? Just follow Druidry, just follow Wicca, just follow whatever? Do you, and of course that's absolutely fine. There's no suggestion, anything I've said, that one should combine things. Of course not. If you do combine things, tell me what you combine. You know, do you combine two approaches? Do you combine more than two? And do you have one as more important than the other? I've noticed, for instance, with people who combine Druidry and Christianity, they tend to call themselves Christian Druids and not Druid Christians. That's because for them, Christianity kind of tends to be their main focus, and then Druidry brings in a kind of support, or in some ways. But so say, you know, if you are combining, say, Wicca and Druidry, say which is, if you have one that's primary and one that's secondary, or do they both flow together in equal terms? So I would love to hear that. And so, you know, the more you write about that, the better. So I will leave you to that now, and I'll come back in half an hour and go through the comments, and I'll pop this up on the blog and so on. So great to see you. And next week, I think we're having a guest. Or possibly it's me, I can't remember right now. But have a wonderful week in the meantime. Much love and many blessings. Okay, bye.